and then usually we just kind of hang out here on Facebook Live for about 30 seconds or so. Did I read your bio? I got to practice reading the bio because whenever I or anyone else besides myself gives me something to read, I have to physically practice it. Hey, Facebook Live, one of my best buddies here, David McGlennen, here for the interview. He's a culture building expert. Else besides myself gives me something to read. And I'm hearing a weird echo.
Hang on, that was me.
Really
Sorry about that, buddy.
Wow, how is that getting in from the earbuds, man? You got earbuds and everything. How did that?
I'm not sure how that got in from the earbuds.
This is why we do the Facebook Live before actually hitting the recorder over there.
Man.
So I'm going to practice. David McGlennen is a recovering triathlete, husband of 29 years and father of 5. He has been in entrepreneurial endeavors for over 30 years. Yes, he has. He's grown several multi-million-dollar businesses and is now helping business leaders all over the world harness the power of the biggest sustainable advantage in business, intentional culture. He's an international speaker, executive culture development coach who has helped Fortune 500 companies and small family-owned businesses alike. I'm going to actually take that last bit out of there just because it's a little bit getting redundant and it might not fit on the iTunes description. So we're going to cut that out right here. And can we talk about Bravo by name? Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Because I want to give a shout out to our mutual friend Jim. And perhaps
absolutely.
Tag him on this as well as some of the friends that I have that work for Bravo. I think it might be a nice
awesome.
piece for Bravo, actually, too. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we're Facebook Live. We are going to go live over here, but I'm going to ask you if you have any questions, concerns, freakouts, clarifications, any of that? Okay.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Good deal. Do it. All right, we got the eyeballs on us already. This is awesome. All right, so we are live. In 3, 2. We are live with David McGlennen. David, are you ready to talk?
I am, Nathan. Glad to be here.
David McGlennen is a recovering triathlete, husband of 29 years, and father of 5. He has been in entrepreneurial endeavors for over 30 years. And he's grown several multi-million-dollar businesses and is now helping business leaders all over the world of all sizes help harness the power of their biggest potential sustainable advantage in business, intentional culture. David McGlennen, welcome to the talk.
Hey, thanks, Nathan. It's great to be here and appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
You know, I know, David, that most companies' culture, it happens as a default instead of by design. But you mentioned in your talks and your keynotes that world-class companies, they actually create their culture by design. And so you're teaching CEOs and business owners how to actually design culture based on behaviors contributing to success. I know a couple of years ago you actually came in at my request and trained as part of our Live to Lead event here in Wilmington, Delaware on high-performing culture. So, please take us behind the keynote that you gave at that event.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Nathan. Yeah. So I talk to organizations, mostly CEOs and business leaders, about being intentional with their culture. Most times companies just the culture just evolves and it just happens by chance. And if you look at the great companies that are in our world today, you can name anyone that you can think of. Whether it's Google, whether it's Zappos, Nordstrom, they're all extremely intentional about their culture, and they do it with a definite purpose, and they do it by design. So my talk in Wilmington was really about how to do that, and using my 8-step framework that I use to walk CEOs through that process.
Now, we're going to listen up because we're going to talk about at least a couple of steps in that 8-part framework as we move along. David, I know you've been building teams and sales managing and doing sales yourself. There are companies that you help build almost from the ground up, and you've got this amazing career And the thing that I love about you and what you've done is someone like you shows us that with intentional culture in our personal life, we really can have it all. You've got a wonderful family. You've got this great career building these companies. Let's zero in on that. Just give us a couple of examples of what you've done in your career in terms of sales teams and culture building teams.
Sure. Yeah. So two that come to mind right off the top of my head. One is when I was very young in my career, early in my career, I was a partner with my dad, and we had a general agency in the insurance industry. And so we built that organization up, like you said, to a couple of $1 million. And it wasn't a great big agency, but it ended up being bought by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana back in the mid-90s. So we sold that out, and that was a great experience. I was learning in that period of time. I was really learning about culture, and it was a family business. There was a lot of a family as a part of it, so there's interesting dynamics, and I learned a lot through that process. And then later on in my career, so the most recent business that I was a part of, a company named by the name of Bravo Wellness. You and I both know Jim Pashak. Jim has been a great friend of mine over the years, and was able to really come alongside him and really help create Bravo Wellness's growth, and was part of the team there that brought that growth about, and it was a lot of fun.
David, how many people? How early was it? Because Jim and I have been friends. I think over 20 years, and then I left town, and then Jim starts this amazing company that is winning all kinds of awards, and then I find out about you, who came along you were in the single-digit employee number, if I remember correctly, and how far did you grow that company with Jim?
Well, so I think when I exited the company, I think there was roughly 180 employees. I honestly don't know how many there are today. But it was a company that was growing really, really rapidly, and it was a lot of fun, to be honest.
And you were employee number.
I was early on. I don't know. I don't exactly know, but it was in the single digits. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know, and this is I'm being a little because. I'm being a little biased here, but when you talk about somebody and they're like, I was number 9 at Google, or I was number 5 over here. I mean, that's pretty epic stuff. So you're already a builder and a growth hacker type of a person. You start with your father in the insurance business, sell that thing off. It's a family business, and you were still able to surmount some of the obstacles and dynamics of that so that you could make it saleable. And then you go over and partner with our friend Jim and help him in that way and grow teams. And then now that was only just a handful of years ago. So what have you been doing in the meantime, and what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I have been, in the last 3 years, I've been working with companies, both large and small, developing their culture, coaching executive leadership teams. One of the things you kind of alluded to and mentioned really is this ability to grow and to grow teams. One of the things that I was taught early on, Nathan, was by my grandfather. My grandfather was probably one of the very first, personal development people. He taught that to me. He basically said, David, you always have to be growing. You always have to continue to develop and don't stay stuck. And so I have really taken that to light. As a matter of fact, I think it was really in my early 30s that something really clicked for me when I started getting into this whole realm of just fitness and staying fit, and how, being fit helps you to become and be a better leader. And so I kind of put those two together. And then when after having a decade or so of that, I was able to use that to my advantage with Bravo Wellness, obviously being in the wellness space.
Yeah, for sure. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about how you're able to juggle that? Because so many of us are striving, even if we're a little bit slimmer by default and through no worthiness of our own. What can we do to really integrate real wellness and health and fitness and still have, eventual harmony? I'm not going to say balance, but I'm going to say eventual harmony, because I know a little bit of the backstory and maybe some of the stories you might tell on this. But how can we integrate that in our life is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm very intentional, and so my fitness is a lot like my morning rituals, and they're scheduled in my calendar, and unless there's very few things that get in the way of my workouts. And because I have my own business, I have the luxury of being able to schedule those when I want to and when it's best for me. So I'm very, very fortunate with that. But I think the word intentional is probably the thing that I would say the most. And everybody's life is different. Everybody's body's different. Everybody has a different rhythm. Some people work out in the morning, some people in the evening. All I've got to say is just do it. Be intentional. Be disciplined and create the habit. I think that's the thing that I have developed over a number of years, is that habit of just being, aware of my health, my fitness, my well-being too.
Yeah, well, hey, Talk Universe, what gets scheduled gets done, and make it a habit. And it's going to be part of your life and your expectation and even your identity. I mean, you couldn't imagine going through your normal routine, David, without doing this. Something would feel off. Something would be off for you, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what we're going to do in a moment here is just pivot over to the Blitz Round. And before we do, I want to let you know where you can go to check out David and his website and be able to connect with him. You can go over to DavidMcGlennen.com. It's McGlennen, correct? Is your spelling?
Yeah, you got it.
DavidMcGlennen.com. And we'll be back in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back with the Blitz Round with David McGlennen. David, you ready for this?
I'm ready, Nathan. Bring it.
So I'm pivoting this from a little bit of our normal Be the Talk format over to the Boss Talk format. And what you've done is help me be able to figure this thing out and be able to ask you some really valuable questions. So thanks for doing that. I'm going to start out with the culture versus time question. I would imagine you get this all the time. What would you say when the CEO comes up to you and they tell you they have to deliver the results now and they don't have time to go back and develop the culture? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's an age-old question. I think so many. It's really one of the reasons that brought me into the culture world, is that I saw so many CEOs and CFOs focusing on the results and the expense side of the equation in their businesses, which, don't get me wrong, I think that expense management, expense mitigation is all important. However, I think they're asking the wrong question, and that is, what's going to give me the best, the most sustainable competitive advantage that there is in business today. Patrick Lencioni in the book The Advantage talks about that culture and organizational health being that most sustainable competitive advantage. So I would argue that they're asking the wrong question.
Yeah, well, here's another tough question for you. This is the leadership versus results question. So instead of culture, leadership versus results. How do the leaders in their organizations become passionate leaders that not only lead their people, but they can also deliver the results as well?
Well, I think it really boils down to understanding that if I'm a CEO of a company and I'm a leader, I need to make sure that I know that my people are my most important asset. And if I can get my people to exhibit and do the success behaviors that will drive success for our organization, then that's going to drive my results. So it's really all about looking at my people in a way that are my most valuable and precious resource, and they also become then again my most competitive advantage.
You know, David, this is the band of brothers versus the Lone Ranger question. What can CEOs, what can leaders do to find like-minded people and be able to grow with them? What's the power of a good community? Some people call it a mastermind. And how can people? What criteria should they really use to be able to find the right one for them?
Well, I think it's a matter of fit, and I know that I saw one of your other talks with David Quick, who is part of Vistage.
It was
first
a great
of all,
interview. I loved interviewing David at Be the Talk.
Really good interview. Had some great, and I would concur with him, where you have to look for an environment and people that are like-minded, that you I'm going to say resonate with. It's one of those things you almost have to feel it. But like David, I have a group like that of CEOs that come together on a regular basis, and then I work with them coaching individually. So I would say look for a group of people that are like-minded and have the same desire to grow that you do.
So this is kind of the same question from the opposite perspective, because I would imagine that you're pretty selective in who qualifies to be in your group. So what are some of the criteria that you really have had to use to make sure that it is the most high-performing culture, pun intended, group that you can possibly have in these CEO groups?
Well, I think, it doesn't take long. If I start asking questions, and I can generally sense whether or not somebody's going to be a right fit or not. I mean, if they've already been developing and investing in themselves to develop, that's a great indicator right there. If they've been investing in their people, if they've been investing in their teams, that's a great indicator. But more importantly, it's just really about that desire to grow. And if I ask them, if in 1 year from now we've been working together, what success would you have? If they've got a clear picture of that, it's a great fit, and we're going to be able to go some places.
Let's say I didn't have the same, and I didn't have the same grandfather as you, who said, always be learning, always be growing, never settle for less. What can somebody like me do to really get on the ball and supercharge my learning without getting burdened down in guilt or regret?
That's an interesting question. I would say, the first thing is, start by reading. I mean, I think that's where I started. I started reading. I started listening to podcasts. Before there were podcasts, they were actually on little things called cassette tapes. So feed your mind. Feed your mind. And, John Maxwell always says, leaders are readers. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that you have to be able to fill your mind with things that you're reading, content you're developing or you're absorbing, whether it's through the written page or whether it's through audio or video, like your podcast.
Yeah. So in just a moment, we'll be right back with David McGlennen for the final word of advice. I want to remind you, just check out his website at davidmcglennen.com. And we'll be back with David in just a moment. And we're back with David McGlennen for the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
So the last word I would say is, if you are a business leader and you have a company that has a good culture, and you want to take it really, what I would say, to the next level, you've got to be intentional. And I'm going to kind of give you just two quick things to think about, and those would be the first two steps of my 8-step framework. And the first is you've got to define what your culture has to be, or what you want your culture to be in terms of behaviors. Not mission, not vision, not values, but behaviors. Secondly, you've got to be able to create rituals so that people can practice. So there's a cadence and a rhythm to practicing those behaviors. So that would be, one of the biggest things that I would say.
Normally I end with that, but I've just got to say those are the same 2 steps that I've been using to produce my 7-day-a-week podcast. Already up over 150 people that I've interviewed. And it was because I defined the behaviors I wanted from myself and my guests, and then I created, and the rituals, I can't say enough about the rituals. Every Thursday, this is what we're doing. So any final wrap-up in addition to that, David?
No, I'll just say, hey, thanks, Nathan. It's been a delight to be on here. I appreciate you being able to break the mold and try something new. Really proud of your growth and this podcast. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
David McGlennen, thanks so much for coming on the Talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe. Oh, and that's the part that I shut the right thing off. Hey, it looks like our translator, Oscar, is online, and he's giving you some thumbs up, and he says,
Oscar,
hey, David,
man,
too.
How are you?
You're both incredible. ¿Cómo está? Oscar, buddy, you've been jumping on here all day. You've been trolling us. This is awesome.
That's awesome, man. Glad to have you on. Good to have you here.
And for all you Facebook Live people, like I said in my last interview at the end, this is a really easy opportunity. If you have a culture issue, if you're an executive, if you're a manager, and you don't have like a super big budget for Q&A right now, ask David your question. He'll be tagged on this, and he'll swing by and answer your question as he always does. Oscar says, good, I'm fine. I'm glad to see that, Oscar, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for hanging out today. And we're going to private offline with David for just a minute, and then we have the hard stop. Take care, everybody.